You are listening to the Glenabbey podcast. My name is Chris Cooke, and in today's conversation, I'll be talking with Andy and Anna-Jael Seymour, Connie Bamford, and Jamie Yohanis about Glenabbey's young adult ministry. Welcome again to episode 4 of the Glenabbey podcast, and thank you to everybody who has been listening, who has been feeding back to us. We've really appreciated all the encouragement of the ones that have taken place so far, and just your enjoyment of those conversations. This is the last in this little mini introductory series of 4, and over the last few weeks we've had a podcast focused on teaching. We've had another one focused on our community ministry. We've had one on missions, and today we're going to be talking about one of our ministries, and that's young adults. And what we hope to do in the future is, after taking a little break after these 4, is to have future series which expand on those. So we might have a future series talking about community and our community partners. We might have a series focused on ministries and so on. So look forward to those and watch out for those probably after Easter is the time when some of those will start to come out again. But today I'm here with a group of people involved in our young adult ministry, and I'm just going to introduce them. And then we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about young adults this afternoon. We have Jamie Yohanis, who's not a young adult, Jamie, but we'll explain the reason why you're here in a little minute, unless maybe you want to still put yourself in that bracket.
I want to put myself in that bracket,
yeah. We have Andy Seymour, we have Connie Bamford, and we have Anna-Jael Seymour as well.
I think, to be fair, okay. 1984 is the cutoff, so the year I was born, is the cutoff for millennials. So there you go. So I'm an elder millennial.
1984, Jamie. Yeah. So that means have you got there yet?
No, okay. This year.
This year, yes. Okay, big birthday this year. Which, yes, after that you're definitely. So we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. Everybody in this room, myself included, because I'm officially the elder liaison for young adults, so everybody in this room is involved in young adults in some way, and there's lots of other people involved in roles in leadership and serving and so on that aren't here. But this is a good little representation this afternoon. But before we get into a conversation about that, over the last few weeks, I've introduced the podcast with asking each guest who is on it a little question. And just a question, either a book that you've enjoyed reading recently, a podcast you've enjoyed listening to, a film or TV show, or if you can't think of any of those, a Google search that you've made recently. Jamie, okay. We'll start with you. Just one, not all of those.
Just one?
Just
okay.
one.
Well, I had 2 prepared.
Okay.
But the book that I just finished a couple of weeks ago, C.S. Lewis, Reflections on the Psalms. Mm-hmm. Don't know if you've ever read that. I found it. I was just reading it alongside reading the Psalms, but it was very, very interesting. It's actually kind of random, the stuff that he says, but the point that really stood out for me that I hadn't thought about before was I'm thinking the first chapter he talks about how the Psalms are structured, and he says largely they are done in images. The writer writes in images rather than in rhyming poetry or anything like that. So whenever you're talking about images or ideas or concepts and parallels or whatever else, you're clashing and contrasting those. It works in any language. So you don't have to be an expert in Hebrew to understand what the writer's getting at. Of course, there are nuances that you can understand, but it's a universal thing because they're images and ideas rather than language, which I thought was really interesting. And he makes the not unreasonable point that that's an indication of divine inspiration rather than, just human authors.
Very good. No, I have that one on the shelf. Looked at it a few times, when you're going through the Psalms. Andy, C.S. Lewis, is that going to go there?
Mine is just as holy. Mine's a movie, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, because who reads? But I've gone...
Teachers are meant to try and read.
I've gone for the movie Free Solo, which is not something I've watched recently. And if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's a documentary about a guy, Alex Honnold, who climbs free solo, so without a rope, El Capitan in Yosemite, so about 900 metres without a rope, and the story that goes into that, and it blew me away.
Right, okay.
So I think it's on Disney Plus, so people that are listening, go and watch it. It's amazing.
Sounds good. Need to note that one down. Connie, what have you got?
Okay, so I recently got recommended a book, and it's by Matthew Miller. I've also sent it into our young adults chat, so hopefully some of them might have it, maybe not. But it is called His House, His Presence, and it's on God's original design for wanting his presence on earth. And I think that that's something that I've been recently interested in, of like, when we're in a room, actually he's in a presence and he's in here and he's moving. And I think that it's trying to welcome his presence in more, that actually you want to, like your home, you want it to be a presence that people walk in and they can just experience God's presence. So it's been fascinating. So it's my second time around, yet it feels like the first, but it's really good.
Good. Okay. Matthew Miller?
Matthew Miller.
Is that a South African guy? Not sure.
I don't think so.
Might be wrong. Might be getting them mixed up. No
I just don't know.
Let's move on. Shouldn't have asked that. Anna?
So I've gone for a book as well. It is John Mark Comer, and it is God Has a Name. So I'm going to be honest, I've been reading this for a year, but it is a fantastic book. I'm still going to sell it. It's based on Exodus 34, and he talks about how this is actually one of the most quoted passages in the Bible, talking about God as Yahweh, and it's kind of changing our view of God as to who God says he is, rather than sometimes than who we say God is. And it's just a fantastic read. It goes through a whole lot of different Hebrew names for God. So yeah, definitely would recommend.
Okay, good. And not one that I've read, but I know we did with a few of the young adult guys. We did Live No Lies.
Yeah,
another one of his
great.
a year or two ago, which was really prompted a lot of really interesting, good conversations. And I know isn't practicing the way just out as well, isn't it? So there's a few there as well. Very good. So recommendations there for people to pick up on, and yeah,
free solo.
So from C.S. Lewis to Disney Plus.
I'll just keep it real. One for the reals. It's out there.
Right, let's get into our conversation today then. So like I said before, everybody here is involved in young adults and serving and leading in some way. Andy and Anna, you come as a pair, so I'll chat to you two first in terms of your story, and that's just for people who don't know you. Just give us a little insight into how long have you been around Glenabbey? What do you do? And then when did you get involved in young adults? And maybe a little bit about what that looks like now for you. Andy, start with you then. So, how long have you been around Glenabbey to begin with?
Too long.
I don't ever remember a time in my life not being at Glenabbey. So the best part of 26 and a bit years is when I started coming. I think there was I don't know, maybe I was 3 or 4 when I started coming. So I've been at Glenabbey a long time. What was the next question?
And then tell us your job. Tell us who you're married to. I don't know.
Married to Anna. We are just coming up on 2 years married. Hard to believe.
That is hard to believe.
Still married, which is an impressive new record. I am a teacher by trade, so I teach down in Larne High School, and I'm enjoying it there. Just started there in September, and yeah, that's kind of
Okay, I'll come back to you in a little minute, Anna. You tell us from your perspective. You'll have more detail than that man.
So yeah, I've been here for about less time than Andy, about 12 years maybe we've been at Glenabbey for. So came up through youth and things like that again. Same question. Been married for 2 years to Andy.
Yeah.
And I'm a special needs teacher in a local school around here as well. So it's fantastic. We can compare jobs, and it's nice to have the same holidays.
2 teachers, yes.
Summers are good.
Summers are
good.
My wife misses me being in that profession
anymore. Between the summers, it's hard, you know.
Yeah.
Interestingly, what's your name again? Andy. Andy taught both 2 of my kids. He taught Toby in P7 and Sarah in P6. Maybe?
Sarah P5.
Sarah P5.
Yeah. I also wanted to point out that I figured out that I'm closer to age to them than I am to you.
Wow.
Which
You didn't have to point that out.
Humbling
just,
moment.
you know, when you talk about the big birthday coming up,
Well,
just
there
thought
are
that
all
was relevant.
sorts of connections in here, because Andy talked about how long he's been in Glenabbey, and I remember him in little pairs of grey shorts in White Abbey Primary when I was teaching there. So yes,
there you go.
So yeah,
Explain why I excelled academically, doesn't it?
So
Mr. Cooke. Yeah.
Yeah. So Andy, moving on then,
Yes.
let's talk about young adults, and let's talk about your involvement in that together. When did that begin for you guys?
Yeah, we were trying to figure this out. We think this is our 3rd year kind of really getting involved. We were approached just as we were getting married.
Just before
we got married, and you know, probably 5 or 6 months before we actually started, and it was something we wanted to consider. And we thought, as we were embarking and getting married, we were already stressed. Well, Anna was stressed planning it. I wasn't. But we just really felt that God was calling us towards us, and we were just in that phase of being young adults ourselves, and we kind of thought we'd always done kids ministry, both being teachers. We always found ourselves in and amongst the kids, and we really enjoyed that, but we'd never actually served together, and we thought this would be a really cool opportunity to do that together. And since then, out of that has born a home group which comes to our house every Monday night, and all sort of the different facets that we'll go into. But that's kind of our involvement, and that's how it started, isn't it?
Yeah,
Anna?
I would just say probably initially that we wouldn't have necessarily chosen to serve in young adults.
Absolutely.
Like kids and teenagers are cool, young adults aren't. And you don't have that sort of like, let's play games with them. So I think it was, yes, we'll do this. But I think what we've both talked about learning from this is how God is actually something that we haven't been as keen on. God has turned that to be a passion for us, and we absolutely love it now. So it's been cool to see in our lives how God has changed our hearts towards loving young adults and what it is, when we initially thought that wouldn't. So we're so thankful that we took that step when we did, rather than backing out. So I would encourage anyone just to go for something if they feel they're called to do it. Cause
that's such a good point. That's such a good point. And I remember being the person sort of praying through and you know, being part of that group of people who asked you and approached you, and knowing that this necessarily wouldn't be exactly where we saw that, and but we weren't sure that you did. So it's, you know, I agree. It's lovely.
Well, thanks for
that.
Lovely to hear. Thanks for all this.
And we'll talk more about how that. So I know. So it's partly my fault. Whatever we talk about, when we talk about challenges later, you can blame me. Connie, let's move on to you. How long? Again, talk us through. How long have you been around Glenabbey? It's going to be a similar story to Andy, of course, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, me and Andy grew up together. No, I have. I've been here since day dot. I think my family had just recently. I don't know how long they had been here, but they had been here a good while.
They had.
Too long, I think, too.
Yeah, because I've babysat you, Connie, so yes, that's...
hopefully more well-behaved. But so I grew up in the church, and I actually, haven't known anything different. But I think once you do that, you've just built so much community. Like, regardless if I go into first service or second service, I know that there's family there, because I feel like I've grown up, and multiple people will say, Connie, you used to be a terror when I used to babysit you.
Never got the hint.
Yeah, still haven't grown out of it. So I think it's been a blessing in that way of being able to grow up with family, with people surrounding me. What was the next question?
All right, next one. Tell us what you do outside of this would be the next one.
I don't actually know what you do yet, growing up with you. Every time I talk to Anna, you always seem to have a different job. So this is interesting for me.
I think my parents would say so too. I currently work for Monkstown Village Initiatives, so I'm a youth worker. I'm currently doing maternity cover. I've said that so many differently that people thought I was on maternity. I'm not on maternity. I'm on cover until March, until Robin Harris comes back. So I've been loving it. It's something actually I didn't think I wanted to go into. Didn't want to. I thought, I love young people. I do genuinely love it, but like it's hard and it's difficult and it's a lot of commitment, and it's tiring and you need a lot of patience for it. But yeah, it's like what Anna said. Like, I think God pushes you or pulls you into places that actually you excel in, and that is the best place for you. So I'm so thankful for people that put me in that position. And I'm loving it, but I finished soon. I finished in March.
You finished soon. And you finished the degree not so long ago, didn't
you? I did.
And what was that?
In theology. So I did it with Merlin's Bible College. So it's based over in England. It is a real university.
It is.
So I have loved it. But so many people have come to me and been like, that thing's real.
So it's like a wizard school.
Yeah. So
how was that? A challenge?
Yeah, it was really, really difficult. I mean, I loved it. I really loved it. I don't think my parents would say that, but I really, really loved it. It was difficult and it was hard, but I think it's the most challenging place. But I think that, it was where God needed me to be, and I would happily go back and study. I think I would love to in the future. I would love to go back and do a master's, but unless someone's funding me, probably not at the moment.
Fair enough.
Am I the only one here that doesn't have some sort of theology degree then? qualification?
Yeah.
You might be. You might be. Yeah, you might be.
It's my free solo maybe.
Right, let's move on to the only adult in the room then, Jamie. We'll come to the reason why you're here in a moment, but again, just give us a little bit of a background to you, how long you've been around. I know there'll be a slightly extended answer to that, and then and then family, work, all that sort of stuff.
Well, my family first came to Glenabbey in 2000, so at the ripe old age of 16, I started attending Glenabbey, and I stayed around until about 2010. So I was involved in lots of stuff, youth ministry and various bits and pieces across the church. Actually, I did a year out with Glenabbey, and then I did an internship with Glenabbey.
And you were just saying, we are currently upstairs at the front of the house in the podcast room, and you did say that on your internship, that in this room you spent at least one night sleeping. Would that be right?
This is my first night in this room. Yeah,
this was your bedroom.
Yeah, and I was meant to be like the security dog, I guess, for like people who were coming and ransacking, because it was an empty house. But I had great crack here. Had the place to myself. So I was involved quite heavily, and then Judith and I left Glenabbey to do like a home church planting thing with some friends about 2010, and then about 2021, 22, we came back and have been attending since about February 22.
Okay,
I think.
Good. Yeah. You mentioned family. You mentioned your wife. Tell us about them.
So I'm married. I'm married. Judith and I are married 17 years this year, I think. And we have 3 kids, Toby, Sarah and Jacob.
And their ages?
14, 11 and 3.
Okay.
So,
nice.
Yeah, I hope that's right.
At the time of recording.
The 3 kids and they're all very happy in Glenabbey and well settled.
Brilliant.
Which is great.
And work-wise then?
I currently work for Belfast City Council, Employability and Skills Officer for their Employability and Skills team. So, and I basically do matchmaking between funders and employers and community organisations to help people get better careers.
Okay. Brilliant. But you have a background as well in education.
Oh, yes. My background is in education, and I did theology and teaching and all that sort of stuff. So
brilliant. And then you're not, as you said, born in 1984. However hard you try, you're not going to make it into a young adult age group. So what are you doing here? What's your involvement, I suppose?
So, Judith and I just started attending. I think it was the first Monday night in October this year past. We started attending young adults home group just to see what the crack was, see what everybody was doing and what they were interested in. You said it might be a good idea for us to attend and see what connections we could build. And so we hung around. We had a really interesting first night. We had a ball, and I'm happy to talk about what we like a lot about the group a lot. But we had a ball, and then we sort of left the meeting. We're like, I was playing it cool, and Judith was like, "Oh, will they invite us back? Do you think they'll want us?" And
it was a long debate. That
we did want you guys.
And we tried to play it cool for a couple of weeks, and in the hope that they would let us stay around, and we have done so. Just to add whatever we can to the guys as they develop the group.
And from my perspective, just talking through what that was about, as a team, we've had a lot of conversations. We'll maybe talk about this later on. We've had a lot of conversations about connecting young adults up with the rest of the church and building relationships and that sort of, and the fact that a young adult home group is brilliant in one sense, but that limits the opportunities. You guys have talked and you have family connections for many, many years, but we know a lot of our young adults, for example, don't. So they don't have those people who are older that they know because they're their parents' friends or anything like that. So that was part of the thinking in terms of getting you guys engaged, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. Andy, I'll come back to you and just ask. Anna sort of articulated the fact that you maybe weren't 100% sure about this at the beginning, but you said yes. But Anna's also just made it clear it is now really important to you. you are now passionate about this. Maybe talk about why it is, how, you know, a little bit about that, and Anna, if you want to jump in on that, feel free.
Yeah, like it was scary initially. We were used to entertaining 5, 6, 7-year-olds who still thought we were pretty cool and scary when we needed to be, and it was a huge jump to then take on really what, you know, people who were our peers, you know, and it was a whole different mindset. And over the whatever it's been 2.5 years or so, we've just found that we're really excited about this, and that we can't help but talk about it. We can't, you know, when the two of us are sitting in the house, a lot of the times those are the things that come to our mind, and that is nothing other than the Lord just putting this passion on our hearts. And a lot of the time we don't know what we're doing. You know, we're just happy to be there for the ride, you know, and it has changed, you know, and how we viewed it, you know, and I think both of us have been quite open to the Lord, just going, do you know what, take us wherever you want us to go. Because like I said, the reality is we didn't know where this was. It was kind of a pilot thing, and we thought, do you know what, let's try this and see what happens, you know, let's throw it at the wall, you know, and see if anything good comes from it. And we're still in that phase. Like, it's not that we've sussed it, you know, and we're on here as experts, but that passion is just...
And I think what you said about peers is so important. Like, we love hanging out with them. Our people are like our friends. It is difficult on one hand when you're leading, but I think for us, what's been really different, we have got so much out of the community that we've built with our friends, that we're not just hanging out to socialise. We're hanging out in fellowship. We're hanging out to read the Bible together. And that's been a real help for us as we've started out marriage, as we've moved into our house, and so many things. It's been so lovely to, one hand, have good crack with your friends, but on the other hand, like, open the Bible and have great discussion with them as well. It's been a real blessing to us. And I think we come out every Monday night and we're like, oh, that was so lovely, like having that community. And I remember we spoke a few months ago kind of about like what it actually means to us. And we talked about like what our chief aim is in life: to glorify God, to enjoy God, and see being able to do that in a community. Although we had fantastic times in youth growing up, but as adults having that time to do that and to do life with Jesus with our peers, like, it's so lovely, isn't it?
So
like,
much fun.
it's so, like, our best friends are there with us. So I think we love young adults, and it's important to us, but actually we get so much from it as well, which is great, you know.
And I remember because I officiated your wedding, of course. Right. And I remember you guys sitting in our house and we were doing pre-marriage together. Yeah. And I remember even hearing your hearts at that point for your home and how God might use your home, which, I've got to be honest, is not a usual thing. You know, a lot of people, when they get married and they hit 25, 26, it's like, now's the time to back off for a while from serving, or, you know, and actually you guys went the other way, and I could see it at that point. And that's, I think your home has been a really important part of this process, hasn't it, in terms of a sort of core, that's where home group meets you, and that's one of the things you've loved, is having the opportunity to open that up and make that a sort of place where people feel welcome and safe and all of those sort. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. I think both of us grew up in homes like that, where it was an open door and there were always people in the house. And to be honest, that's all we ever viewed our house as. You know, there are certain people that always just walk into our house. And to be honest, you know, we're coming on to one of the challenges. One of the challenges that we've had is actually just this year we've really made time for each other, because we have found that we were really keen just to have friends around, really keen to host. And I think that was something that we talked a long time about, was actually having it in our home. And there was chat about maybe having it at church or at you know, someone having a home set aside for us. But there is something special about it, you know, being in our home. And our home, as if you've seen any photographs, it is not well equipped to hold as many people as we need. It's certainly a joy to have people in the house, and, You know.
And it makes us clean our house every Monday. So it's great.
There are good side effects to having that. Brilliant. Connie, let me chat with you. We'll come back at the challenges in a minute. But Connie, again, what's your role and how have you found things and why is this important to you? I suppose it's a similar sort of question.
Yeah. So my role currently is pastoral care with G, or Matthew Gordon, who's awesome, and it's also team leading on a Monday night. But like as they are saying that, I'm like, see, when you get excited about it, it like almost makes you want to sit in your seat, like, let's go. Like it does, it like ignites you. And I think when you see friends the same age, actually it sets a passion in you, regardless of like, I just think it's so beautiful on a Monday, even though some of us come tired and weary. Like when you're sitting there and you're having discussions, like the presence of God is there and it's igniting you, and it's so beautiful to see, and to do it with your best friends, like it's amazing. And I think bringing community on, I just think that that's such an important thing that sometimes we lose sight of, but actually it's the most exciting thing to do it with other people, and you're not alone doing it, and you want to do it with people, and it's so important. Now I've lost thought of what I was saying.
Listen, you've captured it well. Why don't I ask all of you then, because you're far too positive. Why don't I ask all of you about challenges in that, and in terms. Andy, you've obviously mentioned finding time to be a husband and wife in the middle of that.
Well, I'm just trying to be a husband, to be fair.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But yeah, it became. We, both of us, as in Anna and I, are really poor at saying no, and quite like to do, do things that people ask us to. We like to get stuck into things, and very quickly, we realised that you can't do it all. And actually, bless her, Anna's going to live with me for the rest of her life. So we have to figure out how to get along with each other, and how to, keep that friendship as well in our marriage. And I think. We're getting there. Haven't quite sussed marriage out in 2 years,
Next year will be sweet.
That's been something that we've been, and that's come from guys, who have been there, done that. The likes of yourself, Chris, and Jamie, that have been in that situation 20 years ago, but in that situation, and said, look, keep these things, keep time for each other, and that's been kind of something that we've really prioritised. This is actually our date night tonight. It's Tuesday night, so this is quite impressive that we're out.
And you're out here, and you're about to go and have pizza with Upper Sixth as well after this. You're having pizza. There's an element.
That's true. Yeah.
Just ignore everybody.
Connie, what about from a pastoral care perspective? That's I'm sure there are challenges there.
Yeah, I mean, I have such a heart for people, but it does come with its limitations. And I think that being almost a yes person, I think it shows so much more of you, of like, okay, Connie, you're not coming to fix them. You're not, like, it's not that role. And I think that naturally I go into that instinct because I care so deeply. But I think that it's saying no, or it's having healthy community, healthy people, or leadership, or people like the Yohanis has been such a blessing in that sense of being able to be real and actually, okay, what's the struggles and difficulties with that? But I think it's knowing yourself and being more self-aware, I think, once you're leading, of how can I do this in the healthiest way? Because once you want to role model that, but I think, it's trying to have healthier boundaries within yourself, and because otherwise you just fill your day with other people. No time for God. And I realised that in the first beginning of, like, I want to say yes, I want to be around people because I love it and genuinely do love it, but then it's neglecting actually as such a, I need to go first to God to be able to be filled, to then to go other people. And so that's something that God has humbly been showing me.
And how, might be worth talking about from a pastoral care perspective, but from you've highlighted maybe a little bit of support around the edges. What does support for you guys look like, around the team, either both other young adults or other people outside of that? Anna?
I think, we have like you and Jill from a church point of view who we come to and we'll meet with every month or so just to kind of touch base with. And then the Yohanises have come along recently. We've been talking to them a lot about how do we, what's our vision for Home Group? How do we put that into place? How do we, just keep this going, create this community? And do you know what? It's just been really lovely to kind of work in these things and working as a team and discuss these things. So Andy and I, G and Connie, have been meeting up with those guys just to chat chat about that. And then we have some great people in young adults. We have just some people who are so keen, and I'd say that's such a joy is seeing that, and such an encouragement for the church as a whole is seeing young adults or people who are new to faith coming in and getting involved and being so keen to do that, and even coming in and being so keen to share the gospel when they leave, because for us as leaders that's so encouraging as we go out into our week. So we do have great support from those people, and they're a great bunch, aren't they? So.
Brilliant. Jamie, I'm going to come to you. For people, we've talked about all these things and we all know what they look like because we've been around. But as you walk into, Andy's mentioned home group happens on a Monday night. Describe to us what that looks like.
Okay.
What happens. And also then what your and Judith's role has been in terms of being involved in that and bringing that support. And would that be okay?
Yeah,
sometimes it's good to paint a picture for people who don't know what we're talking about. They might have seen a picture before of a tight squeeze.
Well, I think the very rarely are the skirting boards are dusted. So I do
Very rarely, do you mean never?
The first night that we went, I think was probably, a helpful picture for us. I mean, this is a fairly big living room, fairly big kitchen, and the place is bunged and there was nowhere to sit or stand, which is a great problem to have, in terms of the interest that there is there amongst the wider group. I think the biggest impression that we had, Judith and I had, was the energy in the room and the concern for the things of God. So, which is, all the other stuff that we talk around the edges about, structures and how to, create sustainable groups and that type of thing is one thing, but that you can't create and you can't manufacture. And to have that concern for following God, whatever that means, in the room, and to have these guys and others who aren't here, who are demonstrably gifted by God to serve and for the betterment and edification of others, was just very exciting for us to see, and it was something that is magnetic, that to the extent that we were allowed, we were eager to participate in and contribute to in whatever way we could.
And talk then about that contribution so far. I know, like you said, you were sort of just involved at the beginning, just sort of getting to know people, that sort of idea. Yeah. Maybe that's ratcheted up a notch or two recently for in helping these guys. What's that look like again? So describe that to us.
Initially, the first few months, Judith and I were just attending, and ostensibly with the goal at some point giving some feedback about how the nights were running and the discussions were conducted and so on. I have some background in teaching and facilitation discussions. Judith has a lot of expertise in working one-to-one with people.
And translating what you say as well.
That's another thing. It's very hard to get encouraged around here. So we work well together, and we kind of complement one another's strengths and weaknesses. But we were there ostensibly just to observe and give a little bit of feedback, and so we came with a few suggestions about, I guess not necessarily things to do, but categories to think in for what. It's not our job to, we're not leaders of the group. We're barely participants at this point. But it's not our job to say what we want, but we think feel strongly it's our job to help other people work out what they want and to facilitate them achieving the goals that they're setting. So we came with a few categories to think in terms of what the vision for the group is, how you structure a group in order to achieve the vision that you want, the ethos that you would like to see in the context of fellowship, and how you go about working towards that ethos. So we're spoken those terms, and we're sort of working back and forth now to see, what these guys, what Andy and Anna and Connie and G, what do they want the group to look like, and how can we get there?
Brilliant. And so Connie, I'm going to come back to you. So we're in the middle of a Tide series at the minute in Matthew, and what you guys tend to do in the home group on a Monday night is to follow the teaching on a Sunday. You found that's one of the most effective ways of it encourages people to really engage and listen on a Sunday, and then you get to really unpack that on a Monday. But I suppose recently there's been a little added layer added in terms of you have to meet on a Sunday night as well. Talk us through that maybe, just in terms of
I think, if we're honest, is that we were probably before Home Group, before the Yohanis, is that it revealed that actually we weren't spending a lot of time in the questions. And actually, now that we've had to do Sundays, they are a blessing, and actually this is really, really important. And then we want to, it's important for us, but also we're captivating a whole community and people. And actually we want to raise disciples. And it's not that we're perfect in any way of doing it, but I think it has been such a blessing. I think it's your own discipleship. I think you have to take responsibility for wanting to do it and to being there.
So what does Sunday evening look like? And so that people can sort of get a grip. What are you doing on a Sunday, I suppose?
Oh, sorry. Normally we either meet on Zoom or in person, and then we kind of go through the questions that have been given, and then we'll kind of break it down into what works best for our individual groups. So sometimes that's changing the questions that are more fitting, and also thinking of people within our own group, actually, of, okay, well, how does this question come around? How is it best suited to make sense? And also for people to think, you don't want just big words and actually you're just sitting for 15 minutes in silence. But so we've really had to think about it. What questions are we saying? What are we trying to get from it? And almost predicting answers to see how that works. But it's been really, really helpful in that way.
So Sunday night is prep night for Monday night.
Yes.
In terms of just making the conversations richer, actually thinking through what questions really fit your young adult demographic the best, how best to approach them, and being ready for some of those things. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's really good.
It's getting the answers. I've always been a wing it guy.
Okay, have you really?
I've never. Have you really? I'd imagine this is what revising for an exam feels like.
He was actually going to call into this podcast while he's driving on his way home.
Listen, that's Home Group, and we could. I can't believe how much time we've talked already. But Home Group sits at the core of young adults. There are other things outside of that which we don't have time to talk about today, in terms of we've got the likes of Catherine McCartney organising lots of social stuff, Dave McCleary organising the same. So there's lots going on around the edges. Maybe that's for another podcast. But I suppose I want to transition now and move on a little bit. We've heard some of your stories. We've heard people who maybe don't know the ministry that well have maybe picked up again what's sitting at the core. They've heard your heart for it and so on. I want to think about young adults a bit more broadly, I suppose, just as we begin to bring things towards a close. And for people that are maybe a long way away from that age group now, I suppose what are the challenges of being a Christian as a young adult today, and how is what you're doing hopefully helping people with some of that, I suppose? What are the big challenges in 2024 of being a disciple of Jesus as a 19-year-old, as a 21-year-old, as a 25-year-old, whatever it is? Any thoughts on that sort of stuff? And then how's Home Group and how's the ministry supporting and helping with that? And then maybe more broadly, how can the whole church, how can they get involved? How can they get engaged? How can they play their part in supporting you guys and your peers as young adult disciples?
Well, I think we spoke about for a while that before this, that more than ever now, sometimes Christianity can feel like a lonely thing at times. In a workplace where it seems that less and less people go to church, or in university, which is there are so many other messages being portrayed, and a big part of what we're trying to do, and hopefully we're doing it to some degree of success, is to build a community of people that all are connected through the love of Jesus. And we are building up, or attempting to build up, people that can go out and be bold in a workplace, or in a university, or in a family, or wherever the situation is, someone who's bold and courageous. And we've talked about sort of this warrior for Christ in a world that seems to be pushing that so far the other way at the minute. So that's kind of certainly one challenge for maybe not just young adult, but the world, and we've talked about in our morning group, the being human, and that's all the stuff we're kind of talking about in there. And
we were talking about significance this morning, Psalm 139, and finding your identity in the fact that you are a child of God,
absolutely.
And fearfully and wonderfully made, not in either, I suppose, trying to perform to the world or saying to yourself, you be you type thing. Those those things that sound like they're very freeing, but actually carry such heavy burdens at times. I think that's Jamie, any thoughts on that in terms of from, I suppose, looking in from a slightly different perspective?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm obviously, as everyone has made great pains to point out, I'm not a young adult. I don't know how effective or helpful my hot takes on current issues would be with respect to young adults, but I know that having been around long enough to see multiple generations go through the sort of post secondary school, early years of university, early 20s, late 20s stages. That in my experience, not an awful lot of people make it with regards to their faith. So, in my experience, for what that's worth, more people than not who were walking well when they were in their late teens, who were involved in fellowship, who from the outside at least seem to be pursuing the things of God, don't make it to their early 30s doing the same. And, very few maybe even make it to just sort of nominal Christianity at that point. So the issues come and go in terms of what they are, the issues of the day, but to just recognize the significance of that age group, of the stages that you're going through, and the significant importance of the convictions that people are developing. They're developing convictions for something, whether or not it's for God and for the kingdom of God, or it's for something else, that remains to be seen. But just seeing that how dangerous a time it is with respect to the decisions that people are making and the convictions that they're developing, whether or not they'll continue to walk with God the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's important. And I think community, you've touched on community, and we look at the effects of, we talk about COVID a lot, but there's no doubt that had a massive impact, I think, on an age group. We thought it was going to have a big impact on older people who couldn't work technology or something like that. They were all fine because actually they had their friendships established, they had their connections made, they were long term, and that's that's maybe a bit of a generalization, but actually from a church leadership perspective, what we found is it was that sort of 17 to 22, 23 age group, because this is a time of such change and flux, and you don't have those fixed friendships because you're moving from school to university or the workplace or whatever it is, and that disconnect for such a long period of time was such a big deal, and so community, and I think that's where I think we recognised a home group was such an important thing, something that happened every week in the same place with the same people where you could build genuine friendships. Years ago, I think, talking from my perspective, it was all about big events. And whenever I was a young adult, it was all about big events. It's not; those are secondary. No, would that be fair?
Yeah,
I think those are secondary now.
definitely.
Actually, it's the what am I part of? Do people
Intimacy of
see
it,
me?
yeah.
Do people know me? And do people accept? Would that be fair? Anybody want to sort of?
I think definitely that has been a huge thing. Like, we have such a range of people at home group, and it is fantastic. You get to come in, you get to talk to new people have different jobs, people are at uni, people aren't in uni, people work. And I think coming in to meet those people in that community, you're getting those different perspectives. Like Andy said, if you're coming from somewhere where you have no Christian influence, you're needing that as well. So that community has been huge for all of us, and even in allowing things like admonishment or an accountability to happen, like, it's something we all need, and it's something that it's hard to get if you don't have that community around you. So I think even for us, for Andy and I, like, having each other, that's really great. But I've Connie and I've people in my small group to do that as well. So it's having those people around us to highlight those things in our lives, to encourage us to change, and to encourage us to grow closer to God. Because I think what you were talking about, Jimmy, it links into a wee bit. We thought a lot about how we've been through stages of such lukewarmness in our life, and we recognise that in so many young adults in all generations, I suppose. But how do we kind of move from that? How do we make this faith a real act of faith in our lives? And we've seen the change in our lives of doing it through community, and how that just encourages you to go out. Like, on Monday nights, it's like, right now, go and share what you've heard, and knowing that, like, 20 to 30 other people are doing that same thing. It's so encouraging knowing that they're going to give that Bible out today. I can do this too. It's fantastic. It's been such an encouragement for us. So I think community is a huge thing. I think that we all need, not just young adults, but definitely.
Well, let's looking at our time, we're going to need to start to wrap things up. But let's think then about the wider church. So young adults, you've got a group of people from 18 to 20 something in the room, and then Jamie and Judith. But
I have one who's 30.
Okay. So, but
He'll
we love
appreciate
him.
that.
But in terms of I suppose connecting with the wider church, I think what role can we as Glenabbey, the church, play in supporting our young adults? How can what things do you need from us? I suppose if people are going, this is all sounds really exciting, I want to play my part in supporting young adults in whatever way I can. How can they do that? What sort of ways, from your perspective, are good to do?
I think personally for me is that I had the blessing of growing up in the church, and that is a blessing. But I definitely know those ones who've come in and don't have those other relationships within the church. And I think one blessing is that the Seymours had randomly called to say, "Here, would you like to come for lunch after Sunday?" And I was like, an adult wants to have. I know I am an adult, but it was genuinely it was so heartwarming to have just to go, and they actually genuinely cared. And they wanted to sit down, and I grew up at the Seymours, but it was funny to be an adult sitting at the dinner table. And I'm like, but I think that's so important. It's so enriching to have older adults sitting with us and engaging, because sometimes actually we can see it for what it is of, okay, there's anxiety or there's purpose or identity is a struggle, but actually to hear it from older adults of we actually want the perspective. We need help in engaging that, because all we can see is ground level sometimes, and we need to. So I think intergenerational, if that's the word, is so important and is so key for wanting to enrich lives as young adults.
That's great. That's great to hear. Anybody want to add to that? Andy, maybe talk about, you mentioned being human, which we were all at 7 o'clock. Well, sorry, you and I were at that at 7 o'clock this morning. Sorry, not all of us were.
Some of us stayed in bed this morning.
There's not a morning person, sure she's not.
I was working through that book she's been on.
But there is a purpose, as I said in the group and from the front and so on, there's a purpose in that in terms of building some of those intergenerational relationships. It is hard to say, Connie, isn't it? It is.
It is.
So
maybe
highlight, we've done a couple of weeks. How have you found that in terms of for that purpose, I suppose?
Yeah, absolutely. We are strictly second servicers. and I don't ever envisage that changing.
11:35.
11:30, we live 5 minutes away, 11:35, so our usual.
Try hard.
There are a wealth of probably, 200 people that we've never met. They've been going to Glenabbey for 10 plus years. But that idea of, we have a beautiful thing in a church our size is that you could, for a long time, walk in every Sunday and meet somebody for the first time. And there are so many stories to be told. There are so many pearls of wisdom that we would just love to soak up. And through, we were sitting this morning, and I had a young, keen 17-year-old whose dad woke him up at 5 to 6, did you say?
I did, yeah.
And I don't know what age my friend Rob was. But Robert was older than 17, I would say, by a few years. But it was amazing to have that. There aren't often many situations where I would have that, and have the opportunity to talk to, and just hear the different points of view, the different struggles, and the different bits of advice. And it's just as encouraging, and we all know I can talk, but it was amazing to sit and listen and just...
And I think back to week one a couple of weeks ago, and you were in my group, and Connie, you were in my group as well. And then we had somebody at 75 odd and somebody in their 60s, and there's a richness to the conversation, isn't there? And then that gives there's 2-3 new people that you now know to connect with. And then I suppose what I'd be encouraging people to think is use that as springboards for other things. So, like you say, Connie, people probably sitting there going, they never want to come round to my house for lunch, or they never want to come round to my house, or they never want me to invite them for
Please
for
invite
coffee.
me over more, Seymour.
And actually,
Food.
the opposite. From talking to you guys, the opposite is true. Isn't that? Isn't that?
100%.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
especially, like you say, and we've talked about that, for those who don't have those family connections, who have maybe come to Glenabbey in the last year, 2 years, 5 years even, for them it's probably even more important, because they've got a young adults home group, but they're so keen to build those relationships and friendships. So what I'd be encouraging people to do is change the way they think, and just reach out, and friendship across those generations is so important. Where you can do those things, do those simple things, coffee, dinner. They're so key. Jamie, any thoughts?
I've got nothing really to add. I mean, I think well, I'm going to add it anyway. But,
I've nothing to add to that.
I think that just to emphasize what everyone's already said, the importance of hospitality within the church, and it's an important thing that we do with folks outside the church as an evangelistic tool. But if the programs that are created and that the church facilitates are, like you said, they're the starting off point. They're not the end point. And so what I guess in an ideal world, what they're meant to do is to be a spark for, a sustained display of spontaneous, non-programmatic personal investment.
That's why you need your wife to translate.
But to see that kind of hospitality where folks are taking the initiative to invite others, whatever groups or individuals or whatever, that is an investment in somebody. It's an investment in the kingdom of God that's going to reap dividends in the future that you may never see, but it's an investment in the things of God, and it's of vital importance. And I think that, coupled with I think the question at some point was, maybe I just made it up in my head, what can the church do more broadly?
Yeah,
I think for folks, who are not young adults, at whatever stage beyond that, to continue walking with God with radical faith, and to obey Him, and to continue to concern themselves with the things of God and give their lives up for that, as a model worth emulating. For I think that
Paul thing.
Yeah,
imitate me.
It's so essential for people to say, and I think that we really lack this in our culture more broadly. There's somebody that I want to be like. And I think for younger men and women to be able to identify, there's a specific person that I know well enough that I can say, I want to be like that person. And they're a model worth emulating, something that I can aspire to. But because they're also engaging with me, they're supporting me in attaining that as well. And so I think that sort of dual purpose of hospitality, but then also a model, and those two things working together, I think would be a significant contribution to the work of young adults.
And I would just add to that as well, from my perspective, is I know that Gilbert's talk a couple of weeks ago, Matthew, struck a lot of people with younger kids, I think, in terms of, bringing kids up in the faith and the importance of all of that, and the challenges of that. And actually, at the minute, for those people, maybe in their 30s or whatever, the young adult generation, they sort of is not... maybe this is not relevant to them primarily at this stage, but what I've been saying to a few of those guys is to support, maybe it sounds a bit selfish, but to support your own kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The people that are going to be mentoring your kids, influencing your kids, are going to be the ones who are young adults now. So invest in them, and your kids will reap the rewards of you investing in them. And I think that's so important. Is so where you can, and again, it doesn't have to be through programs. Who are you serving with? It's a young adult. And where have you had a conversation, go out, again, invite them for a coffee, have them round for Sunday lunch, have them round for dinner during the week, whatever it is. Think of simple ways that you can, show hospitality, open up your life, have real and meaningful conversations about real and meaningful and important stuff. Is what I think we're all after. Really. Is that be fair?
Sorry, because we also would just love to ask to continue to pray for us, and we as a group of leaders of young adults love to obviously be prayed for, but also to know that you're praying for us. And it's so encouraging. There have been so many times where somebody has come up in between services, or just, call us, send us a text and just say, look, we're praying for you and all that you do. And that has come at times where we're really, you know, it's been a rough week at school or whatever. So just keep it up. You know, it's really, really, I just want to say thanks, you know, for all the people that are praying for us, for all the people that do have us part. You know, there's people that say, oh, we pray for you every Tuesday night. And like, that's just fantastic, you know, and so humbling and so...
You're criticising people for praying on Tuesday. No, it's a Monday night. Your prayers are worthless.
You're like too late.
That's why I haven't been doing well.
But just that message of prayers are an amazing thing. And if you are someone that's listening to this that, you know, maybe doesn't come to church or whatever, you can still pray and you can still be a part of this growing community here.
Sounds good.
Sorry,
Anna, you're eager to add
sorry,
that.
just because this is something somebody in the church has done for me as a young adult that's really encouraged me, linked to prayer, is that this lady who is a bit older than me just came and took my number and was like, I'm praying for you. And we don't talk that often, but every couple of months she will just text me saying, well, how can I pray for you? I'm praying for you, this, and this. And it always comes, God knows, at the times that we need it to. And it has just been the biggest encouragement for me over the past few years. And we didn't know each other that well at the start, but she just knows what to do. And I just feel like I could phone her any time to ask her to pray for something. So I just, to the church, if you see a young adult and you just ask to pray for them, like pick them up, get their number and pray for them throughout the week, pray for us as a whole, but also individually because we need it. And it's also such an encouragement. So
Brilliant.
Prayer and food. It was the two
Prayer
things we're
and
looking
food.
for.
You forget everything else that we said over the last 57 minutes.
Yes, spiritual
Prayer
and physical nourishment. Yes.
Sounds good. Listen, I know a lot of this already, and I'm even more encouraged and inspired and uplifted by having this conversation with you. For people who maybe know a lot less, I feel to see how they could not be as well. So if you're listening, we hope you have been encouraged by this conversation. We hope you've been inspired to think about how you can support and pray for this ministry and these guys involved and the rest of the team that are involved as well. These podcasts over the 4 weeks have got progressively longer, so we have broken the record, but that's okay. People can split it up into two things. You can walk your dog one day and you can drive the car the next or whatever and do it that. But thank you, Jamie, Andy, Connie and Anna, for your time this afternoon, for coming and having that conversation. It's been really, really great to hear all that's going on and to hear just how God is working in your lives, in you and through you as well. And we will continue to pray and support you. And to everybody listening, thank you very much. And until next time.